Tonight on Express.
Hi, can I get a second cone of gold?
What if you could stroll into your local smoke shop and buy a pack of marijuana cigarettes for $2 without a hassle? In the 60s, when free thinkers called for the legalization of pot and LSD, public officials ridiculed them. But today, some responsible government leaders are suggesting that the only way to win the war on drugs is to change the laws that perpetuate the profitable illegal enterprise.
It's not a retreat. It's fighting drug dealers on the turf that they really understand, and that's money. We cannot prosecute our way out of this problem.
The drug scene, however, has changed. This is the Haight-Ashbury Free Medical Clinic's Drug Detox Center. The people waiting for treatment are addicted to heroin, cocaine, hard drugs. Clinics today are overwhelmed with destitute addicts.
Okay, you're here on standby basis, and that means that you wait around to see if someone misses their appointment.
This dismal scene is a far cry from rebellious 60s pot parties. But as the nation's drug problem grows more and more desperate, some establishment politicians have rekindled the heretical notion of legalizing even hard narcotics. Here's why.
Hey, what's your name? What's your name?
Police in cities like San Jose spend as much as 80% of their time enforcing drug laws.
Hey, what's your name? Okay, one
The Coast Guard and customs agencies have become anti-drug smuggling operations. Nationwide, interdiction and law enforcement cost $8 billion a year. Yet, by all accounts, more illegal drugs are entering the country now than ever before. Billions of American dollars are passing untaxed to organized crime and Latin American drug rings, and the street trade is increasingly violent.
So the Uzi has been around for quite a while, and it's been around because, it's so glamorous. The problem with drug dealers is the problem with just about everybody. They fall in love with whatever happens to be the glamour gun of the moment.
People getting machine gunned to death. It's like the Capone era of Prohibition, and innocent people now are beginning to get killed as well.
East Bay Congressman Pete Stark is a longtime advocate of drug decriminalization.
Why are the crazies shooting each other? They can't go to their lawyer and the police and say, excuse me, the other dealer didn't pay me, I want to sue him in court. That doesn't work. So how do they collect their bad debts? They go shoot the guy.
Most politicians respond with yet another crackdown.
The federal government should open up tent jails, TNT, out in Nevada. Nevada won't like it, but in the desert. Right? And we'll pay for 1/3 of the cost of our prisoners, and the state should pay 1/3, and the Fed should pay 1/3. We're not capable of handling a problem that is not of our own making.
What do you got in your left hand?
Today, civil liberties are threatened by street corner searches, random blood tests, and new proposals.
Congress is talking about having the military arrest civilians. And that, in my opinion, is far more dangerous to a democracy than the drug problem is. We would all lose very significant civil liberties, and it's a very dangerous precedent.
The fear of drug laws scares people away from seeking treatment. Here at Highland Hospital in Oakland, a caller says he has just swallowed 10 bags of heroin, but he's afraid to come to the emergency room.
Well, you'd probably be a little bit better if you went to jail than if you died. Those are your two options.
Big money to be made on illegal drugs lures children into crime.
Little kids in Oakland make $1,000 a week, $1,000 cash, after tax. Pretty tough for me to say, stay in school, son, study hard, you too can be a tight end for the NFL. That's about the only other place I'll make $1,000 a week. And this is right now.
Legalization would take the drug trade away from the crooks.
We have an example in Prohibition, and it was not prosecutors, it was not federal agents that ended the crime associated with the trade in alcohol. It was ending Prohibition. And what I'm trying to say is that I would like to end this latest prohibition and use these billions of dollars of resources to attack this as a public health problem.
America has experienced legal drugs before. Until the Harrison Narcotics Act of 1914, drugs like heroin, cocaine, opium, and morphine were readily available. Any mother who gave her child Shiloh's Cure was giving him a little heroin. Dozens of patent medicines contained opiates, often without labels. Addiction was not uncommon, and many addicts lived otherwise normal lives, routinely buying their drugs from pharmacists.
Once it's legalized, the incentive to smuggle doesn't exist.
Bruce Perlowin is a convicted smuggler now doing time for the millions he made off smuggled pot.
You take away the profit motive by legalizing it, and there will be no more smuggling. There will be no more smuggling operations. They would all close down overnights. They'd pack up their machine guns, pack up their electronic equipment, take their public officials who they have paid off their payroll, shake hands with everyone they've worked with for the last 10 years, and say, good luck, get a job.
If the New York Times suddenly sprouted headlines like these, if drugs were actually declared legal, most Americans would be horrified. For while our current drug policies claim new victims hour by hour, those who advocate change are still viewed as radicals.
My son, who's a district attorney, thinks I've dropped off the deep end and I've gone soft in the head, and all we really ought to do is have more arrests and more convictions and more room in the jails. And there are a lot of people who think this is heresy. You know, they will accuse you of wanting to give drugs to people at trick-or-treat time just to be cute.
Serious legalization advocates don't want to see mega profits and drug-pushing advertisements, nor do they favor drugs for kids. But many do envision making drugs cheap, pure, and readily available on the open market to put the black market out of business. The potential harm from legalization is obvious. There is no medical treatment for cocaine overdose. And if more people try these substances, addiction rates might rise unpredictably. 10% of those who drink alcohol are thought to be alcoholics.
Okay.
No one knows how many novice drug users would get hooked.
Thank you. Okay.
We have different responses to people's first use of cocaine. The majority of people, they don't feel anything. They don't feel like, they feel they got ripped off or someone gave them all the lactose and they took all the cocaine.
Dr. Darrell Inaba contends that if the bulk of the population tried cocaine, many would be trapped by a biological predisposition to addiction.
But we also have about 10 to 30% of our cocaine users who report that on the first time they tried the drug, the first time they snorted it, they freebased it, they injected it, it was a magical, powerful experience, something that they never have come into contact with before, something that they knew they had to keep doing.
I'm sorry, we don't have any openings before that date.
We treat 700 to 800 people a month here, but we're turning away 300 to 400 people a month. And I tell you, it's a tragedy. 80% of the people we put on a waiting list never show up again. We never hear of them again. There's been one study that showed in the state of Washington that there was a successful suicide rate as high as 15% in people who were turned away from drug treatment on the day they asked for drug treatment.
You need it as much as you need to breathe. It's not because you want to have a good time. You have to have that chemical mix. Just as
Richard Toohey discovered crack cocaine back in 1979 when he was a successful public interest lawyer. His obsession with crack eventually cost him his professional license and his home.
I knew that it wasn't my fault. I didn't want it, but I didn't know what to do. And so for the first time in my life, I felt like maybe I was not a sufficient human being. If I couldn't get out of this thing, then maybe it is me that's not worth living anymore. And I thought about suicide,
Toohey is still in treatment and has been drug-free for more than a year. And despite his personal troubles, he thinks that legalizing drugs would not pose a problem for society.
It would become, I should think, just another of the vices that does not endanger the entire health and life of our society.